On this Locked On Jayhawks, we recap Kansas's 78-57 win over Oakland to move to 4-0.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Johnson, and this is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And thank you to everydayers catching each and every show. And whether it's your first listen every day, second listen every day, we thank you for that. But hopefully it is your first listen every day. Of course, today you might have made your first listen. Bryson Tiller committing to KU. We broke that one down, so check that one out as well. We're going to get into a recap of Kansas-Oakland. Jayhawks win by 21 points. We'll get into what happened in the game, some interesting notes from the game trophies, and what's next for KU with a little bit of an update on some of the Olympic sports for Kansas as well. This episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started today. I'm going to try to get through this. I have a fever over 100 degrees right now, and we're trying to make it through for the night with the BYU game. But Kansas takes down Oakland 78-57, the final score. Jayhawks kind of cooled off at the end of the game. I think they had like a 3-minute stretch without scoring over the at one point during the final 5 minutes. Then you put the walk-ons in with like the 3-minute mark. That game could have been worse than it actually was. So like Kansas is actually going to lose a little bit of spot on KenPom because they didn't win by as much as you expected. That's why, like, sometimes I like to look at Bart Torvik because Bart Torvik looks more at like when the game was not in garbage time. And so Kansas is still top 5 on Bart Torvik. They are top 10 on KenPom still after this one. But Kansas outscored them 46-24 in the first half. If they wanted to, that game could have been probably a lot worse. And it was interesting because at halftime, I looked up at it, saw 46-24, and it certainly felt like Kansas was the better team and was blowing them out. But it didn't seem to me like it was this dominant, high-paced offensive masterpiece. Maybe that's just because Oakland was playing at such a slow pace offensively, as we kind of discussed in the game preview. And so it didn't feel like you were just running, gunning, and putting up 46 points. But you did. You diced up the zone to the tune of 67% from the floor in the first half. In the end, you end up scoring 78 points against a team who does want to slow it down on that offensive end of the court. You shoot 57% from the floor, 32 of 56, 8 of 20 from three. You like to see that, 40% from three-point range, 24 of 36 on two-point shots, so 67% on twos. Really the one area where neither team shot it well was the free throw line. That was weird. Kansas was only 6 of 11 at the line, which that part's not weird. We've seen that many times before. But Oakland was 3 of 12 on free throws. So that was certainly interesting. But you look at it, and this was just domination all the way down. You were +4 in turnovers. You were +3 in points off turnovers, +2 in the rebounding battle. Didn't really feel like rebounding domination. That was just because they missed more shots than you. They actually kind of had the better rebounding game. Bench points. I mean, that's something that continues to be the theme for – I don't know, maybe not the theme, but a theme of this season compared to last year. You're getting way more production from the bench. And so even if you have a similar team to last year, but if you have just more bench scoring, it just gives you this huge boost. And Kansas outscored the Oakland bench 36-17. I'll be honest, I actually thought there was, and I guess you can, I don't know, with when the KU walk-on lineup was in, I don't know, maybe they were like minus, I guess I can pull this up. So, like Zach Clemens was -7, which was the worst in the game. So if you view that, you know, a lot of the starters were plus for the game. I almost felt like the bench outperformed the starters. I don't know that that's necessarily true. Like DeJuan Harris had I'm not going to shoot, but still like control the game. Hunter Dickinson, you know, didn't have his best offensive game, but he did a lot of stuff to help you out. Like Ryland Griffin was good. KJ Adams was solid for you after he couldn't catch a ball in the first couple minutes of the game. But I thought the bench was the biggest takeaways from the game at the very least. And you could argue was the most impressive part about KU in this game. I think mainly because of what AJ Storr did. Maybe this becomes the AJ Storr game that he's kind of getting it. We'll get into more of that in the game awards. But he ended up with 16 points for KU. He was a +15 in just 19 minutes of play. I mean, he was awesome for you. Even Shaquille Moore, we got to see him for a little bit of action at the end of the first half. And that was kind of a cool takeaway from the game. Flory Bidunga continues to just dunk everything in his sight. and wound up with 9 points, 4 rebounds, and a block for you. So I think there were a lot of good takeaways to have from the bench, and you continue to show, much better bench production than you did a season ago. So that was certainly good to see. Other notes from this game, like I said, Shaquille Moore got in. I don't think we saw him in the second half, so hopefully that doesn't mean that his foot kind of swelled up during halftime or something like that. But I thought he was impressed. I mean, there's 4 minutes, so you're only going to take away so much, but I think the pathway is there for Shaquille Moore being ahead of David Coit in the rotation. You can just see he's an athletic guard. He can get into the teeth of the defense, I think, a little bit more. He ended up with a couple rebounds in 4 minutes, and I think you're going to get maybe more defense from that side of things. So we haven't seen him play, and it's not as much about maybe the performance necessarily, because like I said, it's 4 minutes. It's more so that he's back, and I'd imagine those minutes per game is going to continue to grow as long as he continues to impress in limited minutes, and maybe eventually he does usurp a guy like David Coit in the rotation for KU. I still want to see KU do 3 things a little bit better as the season goes on, maybe in the next game, whatever it is. One of them is continuing to shoot more threes, right? You overhauled the three-point shooting this offseason. You got Zeke Mayo. You got Rylan Griffin. AJ Storr hits a couple threes in this game. David Coit can be a three-point sharpshooter from the outside. And I think it behooves Kansas better. I mean, they did take 23s in this game, and I would like 20 to 23, somewhere in that range. I think would be a good number for KU. So you were on the lower end of that, but you get a couple up with the walk-ons coming in late in the game. I feel like there could be even more three-point volume for KU. And part of the reason is that I think it's going to open up the spacing even more, right? If you end up going into some of these games and you shoot, 7 of 17 from 3, teams still are going to clog up the paint because they're going to say, okay, well, you're really not shooting that many threes. What's the big whoop? So I think they need to find a way to get even more of those up. Some of that has to come, in the you don't want to force it. You don't want to just start launching contested threes. And, in this game, am I really going to complain? They shot 59 or 57% from the field and 67% on twos, and it was against the zone, so it's a little bit different. So it's just something that I'm kind of keeping an eye on, I guess. I also want to see them force more turnovers. This was a game where you forced 12 turnovers. That's fine. Nothing crazy. You had 6 steals. 4 of them came from DeJuan Harris, and the other 2 came from Hunter Dickinson. I feel like the idea of having more players that can handle the offense around DeJuan Harris is that he's going to be able to get you more steals, and he did in a game like this. But where is the rest of the team, right? KJ Adams, you want him to be an active defender and get some steals. Shaquille Moore, I know he only played 4 minutes. Eventually you want him to be somebody who's getting steals for you. Between really athletic wings, Rylan Griffin, AJ Storr, Rakeese Passmore, that's 48 minutes played from 3 athletic, lengthy wings, and you get 0 steals combined. So that's something where I think Kansas can do a better job at it. Can you force some more turnovers to help win the possession game? And then the last thing that I'm kind of looking at here is, can you be a better offensive rebounding team? We haven't really seen it from the team this year. You only end up with 6 offensive rebounds in this game. Flory is the best offensive rebounder on the team. Credit to KJ Adams. He had 2 of them in this game. He tied with Flory for the lead. But again, it's the possession game. I think Kansas is going to be a team that can dominate on the inside, will then further dominate on the inside, win the rebounding battle even more. Because when you look at rebound percentages in this game, Oakland was able to hang with you in a lot of different areas. So the bottom line here, you left no reason to be skeptical. You left no reason to be upset about this win. You just took care of business. You won by 21 points. Easily could have been more by that. You also got to face the zone defense, which I would think that's going to give you some good reps, good practice, because you're going to play a team later in the year that runs some zone. It might be like Baylor, they've kind of adjusted to running a zone. They got torched by Gonzaga, started running a zone a little bit more. Could be them. Could be another team just throws it out you a junk defense later in the year, right? Now you have a little bit of reps on it. Now you're 4-0 in the year. And I think you also started to unlock maybe AJ Storr. Maybe you started to unlock some of these bench players and started to figure out their roles maybe a little bit more if you're KU. All right, let's continue on this episode of the show Game Awards next. Our episode today is brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. This year, skip the holiday hustle and bustle and save 50% off gourmet gifts site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get a $30 reward card when you shop early and score an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages starting at $89.99. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts, and more. You can save 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com, OMAHA steaks.com, and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. Again, apologize if I'm loopy or out on this one. As you can see, I'm like sweating. I have like 103-degree fever coming into this. So we're making it work. Okay. Kansas leads 78 or wins 78-57. See, there we go. What is the game trophies from this game? Well, let's start with the best moment of the game. I think that Ryland Griffin 3 to close out the first half was a great moment because when you look at individual plays in a game like this, you obviously blow out Oakland. You're expected to win by a lot. You know, it's hard to be like, oh, that's going to be something that they use later in the season. But Ryland Griffin working on an out-of-timeout play and cashing a 3 at the end of the half, like that could be something that can steal you a bucket, steal you a close game in Big 12 play. So I think that was up there. And then my favorite play, honestly, was the Zeke Mayo in transition, dribbles it behind his back, defender tries to jump on him, dribbles down the court, and then has kind of the spin cycle layup from the opposite end of the cup. That was maybe my favorite play from the game. Worst moment from the game. I think they missed 3 or 4 dunks. Like I think Flory missed one, which you don't see. KJ couldn't get the alley-oop on that first play of the game. I think there was another 1 or 2 in there that they missed. And then the other worst moment, Zach Clemens missing that layup at the end. Because at this point, I mentioned he was -7 in the game that you won by 21. I just kind of feel bad for the dude. Like, I don't know what his role is on a basketball team. And, you know, we didn't see him in the rotation at all for this game or the last game. I think you kind of know why based on how it goes. But I certainly hope that at least when he's in there with the walk-ons that he can succeed, because I am starting to just kind of feel bad with how that's gone. Get this dude some chalk award for the beginning of the game. Goes to KJ Adams. KJ ended up with a solid game for KU. He had 12 points. He was 5 of 6 from the floor, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, compared to just 1 turnover. He played 24 minutes. He was plus 21 for KU. But at the beginning of the game, the dude couldn't catch it. He had the alley-oop that he couldn't hold on to. There was a couple other plays that he just basically 3 drops through the first 3 possessions that get this dude some chalk because he had a chance to make a couple big plays early on in the game. I'm going to dunk everything award goes to Flory Bidunga. So I tweeted this out at halftime, and Flory at one point had made 12 shots. This was the count at halftime. I don't know what it finished up as. Of his 12 made shots by the time the game reached halftime, 11 of them were dunks. Nothing is better than a Flory dunk. Now, Doak is like his dunk numbers were off the charts in terms of totality, but he still took a hook shot. Like the percentage of shots that he was taking that were dunks is just going to be unrivaled for Flory Bidunga. Like it's a dunking machine, which is fine. I love dunks. They're great. And then my next award is he's starting to get it award. Okay, so it's easy to come away from a game like this and say that AJ Storr had a great game because you look at the stat sheet, he had 16 points, 7 of 9 shooting, 2 of 3 from 3. He added 3 assists, 2 rebounds in 19 minutes, was a plus 15. And it's easy to just point to the box score and the points and register that as why he had a good game or not. But to me, it felt like there was a lot of in the flow of the offense. Like there's going to be the occasional shot by AJ Storr where he maybe is forcing it or has to grind to a shot, but that's kind of why you brought him in. But there were a lot of things that basically, we've heard from Bill Self. He wants him to do the little things and still be the guy that we know he can be. So you saw him be the guy we know he can be when he's hitting a couple of the mid-range shots in the second half, or when he throws down a couple dunks in transition. That second one in the second half was really cool too. When you see him creating shots, when you see him hitting threes from the corner, those are the reasons that, got him second team All Big Ten at Wisconsin last year. But what about the little things Bill Self wants him to do? Well, the first bucket that he gets of the game is a dunk where he has the ball and he could have just taken it himself straight to the rim. Instead, he gives it up to DeJuan, and then DeJuan feeds him back, doing the little things. He cut on a action with Hunter Dickinson, who Hunter feeds him for the second bucket on an and one, right? Learning to play off the ball. And then he gets in transition and gives it off to an advantage for Hunter Dickinson for a bucket. And then in the second half, he threw a lob to KJ Adams. So I'm seeing some of the small things come together in this one for AJ Storr, and some of the big stuff came together too. It is just one game. It is against Oakland, but that was a good, really big step for AJ Storr, I think. Offensive MVP, I'm going to go with AJ Storr. 16 points in 19 minutes on 7 of 9 is good. I will give an honorable mention, though, to Ryland Griffin. Ended up third on the team with 11 points. He was 3 of 4 from three-point range. He had 3 assists. He had that big 3 at the end of the half, played 20 minutes. He just spaces the floor in such a real way. And It's pretty incredible what he provides spacing-wise, I think, to the offense. Defensive MVP, I think there's two obvious ones here. So DeJuan Harris had 4 of your 6 steals. Hunter Dickinson had the other 2. Hunter Dickinson had 4 of your 5 blocks. So when you look at it from a just pure stats perspective, you'd have to go Hunter. 4 blocks, 2 steals. But I am going to go with DeJuan Harris. The 4 steals, this wasn't a game where he really wanted to shoot. He was just kind of being a pest on the defensive end of the court. Hunter also had 8 defensive rebounds, so maybe that factors in. So I'll give honorable mention for defensive MVP in this one to Hunter. And it helped that you played, right? When you're playing in North Carolina, it's going to be tough for Hunter to be a net positive on the defensive end where he's being put in ball screens and you're facing other big men that can shoot. When you're playing Oakland, who has 2 6'6" big men who don't really shoot, it can be a good defensive matchup for Hunter because he is just gigantic. And if you're not going to take advantage of him in space, then he's actually going to be a good defender in those situations. So DeJuan Harris, defensive MVP. Hunter Dickinson gets honorable mention, defensive MVP there. All right, what's next for KU men's basketball and a little Olympic sport update? This is Locked On Jayhawks. Our episode today is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place those bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the Locked On Podcast Network. So continuing on with this episode, what is next for KU men's basketball and a little Olympic sport update? So they're going to be back at it on Tuesday. That'll be against North Carolina, Wilmington. And then after that, it is a week off and probably the biggest one. I mean, it's hard to say the biggest one when you're playing a rival like Missouri. Like that just has a different view of biggest, right? But maybe the best team you're going to play in the non-con with Duke, which that'll be in Vegas. So Tuesday against UNC Wilmington, then the following week, Tuesday against Duke. And when you look at North Carolina, Wilmington coming into the field house, so Oakland is 198th on KenPom. UNC Wilmington's 159th, so it'll be a slight upgrade from that. Howard's like 227th, so a bit of an upgrade from that as well. And then Duke is ranked in the top 5, so that'll be a much different matchup there. But early thing I'm keeping an eye on for UNC Wilmington, they're second in the country in getting to the free throw line, so that'll be something to keep an eye on, especially with, Flory's had some foul trouble early on, as you'd imagine, from kind of a freshman center in terms of finding his bearing. Some other stuff for KU. The KU women's soccer team had a great run. They beat the 3, the 2, and the 1 seed in the Big 12 tournament, made it to the NCAA tournament, had to take on a number 8 seed St. Louis in the first round on the road. They fell 1-0, but I mean, all things considered, that's a phenomenal first season for Nate Lee, the new head coach for the KU women's soccer team. You win the Big 12 tournament and you go to the NCAA tournament, right? They're still going to be recruiting. They're still going to be bringing in, all their fits to what they want to do schematically. So doing that in your first year, I think shows that sky is kind of the limit. And Travis Goff continues to kind of hit home runs on these coaching hires, right? You think about some of the hires that they've made, like they've been really good, and Nate Lee is certainly one of those. One of the head coaches that he already had in tow, I guess you're just trying to keep happy, is Ray Bouchard. And if you were watching at halftime of the KU game, they did an interview with Ray Bouchard and kind of recapped that volleyball game. So they had a tough one last week. They had to go into the state of Arizona, played on the road against an Arizona State team who's one of the top 15 teams in the country, played on the road against a good Arizona squad, and they lost both. And so that put them in a situation, one game back of Arizona State through the weekend for the Big 12 standings. And it didn't get any easier this week. Obviously came back home, but played a ranked TCU squad. And then today, Saturday, played a ranked Baylor squad. They beat TCU, and then on Saturday, they swept Baylor. And so it keeps you in the running for a Big 12 title. They're going to be at K-State next week, which K-State played them really tough in Horish earlier this year. So that won't be an easy one. Rivalry match on the road. But for Kansas, if you just keep winning, maybe you won't end up winning the Big 12, but at the very least, ranked 12th in the country, you just got a couple ranked wins. So we'll see if they move up to, 9, 10, or 11 or something next week. If you just keep winning games, you'll at the very least be in a good position to host in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament, which they were able to do last year. Got a tough matchup with Penn State in the second round that they just fell in 5 sets to. But at the very least, if you could host back-to-back years, that would obviously be a big deal, as Ray Bouchard has done and continue to do great things with that KU volleyball program. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. Because I'm not feeling well, we're going to probably have the post game for the BYU game at some point on Sunday. So apologies for that. But don't forget, you can check out the Bryson Tiller commitment article. You can, if you're listening to this before the KU BYU game, check out our KU BYU preview for that one. And that'll do it for this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. See you next time with LOJ.